Okay, I will read this out loud and I'll try not to cry. Forgive me, just kidding. As I said earlier, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Are there any announcements? Is there anybody with us electronically? Thank you, sir. Okay. I'll entertain a motion. Approval of the agenda.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
we would like to remove 2 items.
Oh, please. Okay, and they are?
Consent item D, the Sally Doherty Grass Waterway,
Very good, sir.
and number 1 under engineer, Bridgewater Village.
The one engineer, the Bridgewater Village, Lake Elmo. Okay, very good, sir. Okay, so those are removed. Anything else? Everything else okay? Anybody? Mr. and Mrs., we welcome you.
Thank you.
May I ask who you are?
I'm Jim Melkowski.
Mr.
And this is
Melkowski.
my wife Nancy,
Nice to meet you.
and we live in the major metropolis of Plain Springs.
We, we will be conversing with you a little later. But
Okay.
thank you for attending
Sir,
and looking forward to a nice conversation.
thank you.
All right, so I'm going to continue.
Yeah,
Yes.
you didn't pass the agenda yet.
Yeah, I know that. That's what I was
Oh, I'm
gonna
sorry.
ask.
Sorry.
Quite all right. Sometimes I'm on the ball and they're not. There you go.
Ah.
Okay, so I was entertaining motion. Somebody to make the approval of the agenda.
The agenda
So moved and seconded.
with 2 items removed.
Yes, thank you, sir. So moved and seconded. Aye.
Aye.
All right, the agenda is approved. All right, public forum. Anybody wishing to speak? We already have Mr.
Melkowski.
Melkowski here and his wife, Miss Nancy. Got there. Thank you. And we will have that discussion soon enough. So outside of that, I will make a motion regarding the consent calendar to approve the consent calendar unless any of the managers have anything they want to remove. Yes, sir.
I'd like to pull the item B,
Item B.
the surety reduction.
Very good, sir. Okay, so we will remove that. And so I will make a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item B, permit 2022-04 surety reduction. Do I have a second?
Second.
So moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 It is, the consent calendar is approved. Now let's move on to the surety reduction. What do you,
Oh,
sorry.
I got it.
Okay, cool. What do you have, sir?
I just mainly wanted to clarify the surety, which I believe is a bond, correct? Okay, I didn't see that listed in here. Maybe it is, we didn't list it. But I think it'd be worthwhile at least noting it here. Other than that, the surety reduction, I would move that we approve the surety reduction for permit number 202204.
I'll second that motion.
Aye.
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 Thank
Oh,
you, sir.
what was it that you wanted noted, Rick?
Pardon?
You pulled it.
That it was a surety bond rather than cash paid to this.
Okay. All right. Updates and requests from partners, volunteers, and citizens advisory committee. Let's move on to business and reports, because we have nothing else. Attorney, you're on, Susanna.
Okay. Something. So you got a few memos from me. So let me just get to them.
All right.
All right, the variance criteria, so this is slightly updated from what you had last month.
Correct.
So Bill had asked, and so this is where you have 2 that kind of work together. Bill had asked about the word unique, which led to much legal research because it wasn't forthcoming. So I'm actually much more educated on the variance process and felt that I should just update the first permit a little bit.
Yes.
Or I'm sorry, the first memo a little bit.
Yes.
Really what it is the statute lays out, it's interesting, it's all about zoning.
Right.
criteria for cities that they have to review. There's a whole different statute for criteria for counties, for like boards of adjustment and appeals, that they have to review. And so really, because it's about zoning and the watershed doesn't deal with zoning, I see that more as a guideline. It's not explicitly required. So really, all the managers have to consider is the factors you've set out in your rules. So I just wanted to point that out because before I had said really should do all of them. It doesn't hurt to do more, but really all you really need to do is what's in your rules. So then I modified the variance worksheet just a smidgen to really conform with your rules. So that's really the gist of that one. I won't spend a lot of time on it unless you have questions. The next one was dealing with the word unique. The
Okay.
reason I had to research so much is there's not a clear answer. The
Sure.
statute gives very little guidance. Just saying circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. So that's really your only kind of helpful part there is that whatever you find unique about the circumstances can't be created due to the landowner. Then when I looked at case law, the Court of Appeals, the thing you have to remember is the Court of Appeals is not a fact-finding court or the Supreme Court, right? The facts have already been determined and they're more concerned was a proper law applied. So they could focus on the word unique, but they don't. What they tended to do was just point out whatever the municipal entity was, whether it was the county or the city, and say, here's what they found, and then they would focus on something else. The two cases I found where they did talk about something being unique was where a city having to do with a setback. And so that was comparing the property to surrounding properties. So I found that as a helpful guideline. The other one that was kind of funky was the city of Minneapolis, stay with me on this one. The city of Minneapolis had passed a density limiting ordinance. And they allowed a 42-story high rise, which would go against that ordinance because they looked at the overall neighborhood. So that was different than just comparing it with the surrounding property. So that's why I pointed it out, is because the Minnesota Supreme Court acknowledged, actually it might have been the Court of Appeals, basically said it doesn't just have to be the topography. It doesn't, you can extend it beyond that. So that's why I thought it was worth pointing out. But really, the guidance I have for the managers on this is you just need to be able to verbalize. Either there is something unique or there isn't. That can't just sort of be nebulous. There should be something you can verbalize, and it can't be arbitrary or capricious, because that's really what the courts are going to look at if someone were to challenge. Does that help?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
So we have to be uniform, and of course, that's why you keep
Yeah.
our feet to the fire on these matters.
Yep.
To make sure that we comply and maintain the same, what's good for the goose, good for the gander. Full of all sorts of terms, except the proper one regarding the uniformity of how we conduct.
Yep, and variances are somewhat challenging because the whole point is that it doesn't, someone is asking not to conform with the rules for some reason. Right, so if there are no questions on that, then I'm actually gonna hop on to the next memo.
If I may, I
Yes.
just have one thing regarding this. Mr. Hanson, you come in on this one. This is our is this, and this is for clarification. My understanding that the district will use this variance worksheet from now on when somebody approaches us with a particular matter, or have we established that at all?
It's up to the
No.
managers, if that's what you wanna do.
Okay, because this seems like a very simple litmus for something or other. And I'm wondering if we need to make this policy, or, we need to take a vote, we need to do something regarding this matter. At this point, we don't have to do anything like this today, but this is something to consider, correct? No? Or-
Yeah, I mean, you certainly can. I mean, if you want the full board to vote on it, you certainly could at a future one. You know, this is kind of your second meeting talking about variances
Okay.
and this process, at least two, if not third. I mean, if it's something that you felt compelled to move today, then John can just add it to future variance requests in the packet,
So-
if that's what you'd like.
And I did want Mr. Bill's take on this matter.
Yeah, I think it's a standard practice. It would be a good idea just to have the worksheet to go through every time. Have variance requests. I think it's a good idea. Just include it with any variance requests that we have and work through the worksheet.
How do you gentlemen feel about making this something we can add this evening, or shall we wait for a full board attendance?
I wonder if it'd be worthwhile having a few more examples or situations where we use it. So
Okay,
kind of use it informally,
okay,
or maybe, you know, a little more than informally, but try it out for a while and then say, okay, you know, is this the way we want to go with it?
that's very appealing.
If nothing else, it helps us make a record of why we've made our decision, and that's important in case our decisions are challenged.
So I appreciate your input, gentlemen. And with that said, I would like to ask our engineer to make a note of this so that we can consider it for a future meeting. And Rick, of course, made a very important point that other examples might have uniqueness to how we deal with that. So just don't know. Okay, counselor, please proceed to our next item.
All right, next one, I have this for information only, but if the managers feel strongly about something, I can bring it back next week for a decision by the board. So, full disclosure, this is, my client. So not just a client of the firm, but clients that I actively am representing.
Yes, ma'am.
It's the Peanut Poppies Ranch.
Right.
They're plating. So this has to do with the easement. Really, the reason it's before the managers is that you can see them, and if you go down to the first, it's Exhibit A. Thank you, John. You can see that there's a whole lot of surface water drainage easement area, which they don't have a problem with. But part of it goes across, that easement area goes across their driveway, where they currently have driveway. So the way I drafted the easement is I added language that just accepted out the right for them to continue to use and maintain the driveway as it currently exists. So it doesn't give them the right to expand it. It doesn't give them the right to modify or move it. The only downside is that the easement doesn't show where the driveway is. So it is just kind of a little loosey-goosey on the language saying where it currently exists, but I know they don't have plans to develop the property. That's not why they're platting. But I didn't feel it was appropriate for me to make any change to the form and record it without the managers knowing. That's what I had done.
That seems quite reasonable, and we're not anticipating anything that might be out of the way regarding implementing something different regarding the driveway.
Mhm.
So,
Where is the driveway on the map?
So if you go down, keep going through the pages. It's not on I gave you a GIS map. Sorry, yeah, just keep going, yep, pages forward. You'll get to the yep. So you can see where the current driveway is.
Yeah.
So unless the managers have concerns or questions and want to bring this back for more discussion or approval at the next meeting, I'm just going to record it because it's already signed and good to go. Okay,
yes,
One question
Yes,
I
sir.
would have would be is if they were to look at repaving it or changing, you know, something along that line, then come before us.
they would have the right to maintain it. So if it's currently paved, they can pave it. I don't really know if it's class 5 or whatever it is, but whatever it is, they are maintaining that right. What they couldn't do is change the location or widen it or anything like that.
But if they changed it from S5 to, asphalt,
I don't know. I mean, I think that would just be if it would normally trigger a permit, which I don't think driveway paving typically triggers permits.
okay. I would want them aware of that if it were.
Yes. They're very amenable. So,
Yeah, there's a minimum risk as far as I'm concerned. Right.
all right.
Is there anything required of us beyond?
No, I had it for information only, and I was prepared to bring it back if any manager was uncomfortable with the way it's currently drafted.
Oh, man, you're good, Mr. Bell?
It's, as projects go, I think it's in the running for the most unique name of the year.
Yeah.
So they get a variance because of that?
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never heard that. Oh,
All
boy.
right, I think that's the end of my information.
I thank you kindly, Mrs. Allen. All right, let's move on to administrator engineer. We're not going to discuss permit 2024-14. So draft resource prioritization for the 2025 watershed management plan revision. Okay. Are we gonna have a long discussion on this?
I don't think one is necessary, so that included in the memo, in the packet is a memo from Greg Williams. It's the same memo as what he produced back at the end of June, and in order for ease of showing where the changes are, it's left in the red line strike out, so you can see where the changes are. He incorporated what he heard from the managers as far as
Right.
feedback on how to
Table one.
prioritize various basins, and those are shown in table 3, basically.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious.
The managers are fine with it. Greg will go ahead with preparing the plan. He's part of this.
I had one question, and that is, you know, I was happy to see that Rose Lake got moved to medium priority, that's as we had discussed. Do we have or need a basis for the change that we've made? I didn't really see that. I was thinking it might be worthwhile having something in there, so, you know, that you know, states that, you know, if we've got at-risk areas, or something along, or, you know, water bodies, something along that line. It might be something that kind of guides the decision that was made there. If it was, people were aware, that's what we, in essence, we were doing.
The subletter L that's on it for this,
Yeah,
is that a sufficient indication or?
I
Because if you
think.
reference that,
That should actually be a M.
First,
it should be an M?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, no, you're right. It's the L, because in the current plan, it's a low priority. Future plan, you're proposing to.
Got it.
right,
Okay, and
and
Manager Gelman, I think on page 6, that first paragraph, what's been removed. This may be getting a little bit at what you're saying, is that the managers may choose to prioritize something a little bit differently than.
That,
well, where on page 6?
that's discretionary, right?
But it doesn't say why Rose Lake was moved. So I think that's your point, is to document why. it was moved.
We do have that.
I'll ask her to do that.
Mhm.
Second choice.
Thank you. Other than that, it's fine.
Very good. Would you like to make a motion, sir?
Move that we go ahead with the changes made in the memorandum from Greg Williams.
Okay, I will second that motion.
Aye.
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 It is approved. Can't get any more formal than that, right? John, please let Greg know. that does very good work. We appreciate his help. Thank you. Okay. That is squared away. Our next item. The letter to the owners of dwellings identified as at risk of flooding. I reviewed this. Did you gentlemen look at this? Do you see anything extraordinary or add any more pleases or thank yous or anything like that?
Do we want to push things a little bit further? I know sometimes people see a letter and they maybe don't take any action on it. Do we want to go as far as to
Change the language, urge,
well,
we
or,
urge you.
well, even further than that, please expect a phone call or something like that. Do we want to go into that level of?
You know what? That's not a bad idea. I mean, again, we would look at, John, just as a note, to look at what we might consider a high probability or a high risk factor and contact them. But still put this out,
Yeah, definitely.
okay?
Then they've got, I mean, I think you made a real good point that for the last time we talked about this, we don't want to be giving the impression that, we're coming in to take over and make changes. We want people to be aware of what the situation is and have every opportunity to know the kind of help that we can provide.
So President,
Yes, sir.
so in the paragraph right before the bullets, am I hearing you correctly in saying that you'd like that to maybe be changed to say something like, we would like to discuss results of the study, specific information regarding your home and or potential next steps. Please contact. Maybe modify that somehow. Please contact Jen and John. Is that,
Yeah, we've done that.
so instead of saying if you would like, just say we would like to discuss.
Yeah,
Oh, I was thinking that we would take the action of calling them.
Okay, yeah, we might not have phone numbers. Phone numbers are harder to get these days.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay.
we could add, we may decide to contact you. I think that makes it more, more ambiguous. How's that?
Is there any sense in pulling out the highlighting or bolding or something that the part that says based on your home was identified as potentially impacted either by water and just so people don't throw it away immediately. If it's some sort of junk balance,
Yeah.
too heavy-handed.
Yeah, so, I see what you're saying.
Given that new information, about not having, not necessarily having phone numbers for people, that may just say, oh, they'll give us a call. And then we would lose more ground than if we just leave it as, please contact us. In essence, the way you've got it already. But, I like the idea of strengthening anything a little more definitive.
Urge you to contact us.
Yeah, that's it.
Can we fit that in? Is that appropriate? Very good. Okay, with that said, also, please thank Ms. Jennifer for the hard work. And if you gentlemen have nothing more, we can direct Mr. Engineer to follow up. Is that all that is required? Yes. Okay, very good. You're good on that, sir. Okay. Our next item is the updated Tri-Links area flood control brochure. I kind of like it as is. It's a good read for me, and it's a good explanation, good background. Not just for the managers, but for many people. And I'm okay with it. If you gentlemen have any modifications or any comments, and that includes you, Mr. Brower, Inspector, my favorite inspector, if you like. Is there anything that stands out or that you'd like to add? Okay.
Looks good to me.
Okay. You don't need to do any editing. We could just ask you to put that together and put it to our website, please.
Okay.
I thank you kindly, Mr. Engineer. That's squared away. We're going to move to this is on. Did we put no, we're gonna get to this one. Okay, first, Mr. Inspector, do you have anything for us? Very good. Take that as everything's okay so far. Okay, very good. Gonna be getting some, no rain, but I think the humidity is gonna go up. So a little discomfort, but other than that, no flooding. Yeah. Okay. All right, very good. Managers. Cimarron wastewater treatment plant food protection strategy. What is going on there? Did I miss something?
No, I think this relates to the meeting that
Oh,
we had attended. I don't have.
oh, that's right, Cimarron, that's right. Okay, gentlemen, both of you attended,
Mhm.
and so some input from each one. Sure, Bill.
Difficult problem that here. I think that this was just a preliminary meeting.
Of course,
and
of course.
they're going to. Everybody sort of had an input. Rick, I don't know what your takeaways were on it.
Mhm. You know, I was pleased to see all of the parties that were there, you know, a good variety from the city, the state, the county, as well as the Watershed District and Metropolitan Council attended. So I think a lot of it, you know, governmental authorities or the people that should be involved were there. And I thought it was a real good discussion. It is, but you know, as many people as were there had their own opinions about or own perspectives on what the situation was. I think as a general kind of conclusion coming out of it is kind of a waiting game. There's sanitary sewer that is quite far away right now. And as that gets closer, the costs come down. Costs, I heard 2 million as a bottom line and probably $4 million to be able to connect Cimarron up at this point.
Only 4 million?
Only 4 million.
Okay.
And it also came up that the treatment plant that they have is the original. And its lifespan is probably down to 10 to 15 years. You know, that, so in that same time frame, sewer ought to be a lot closer and reduce the cost significantly in terms of making the connection. But that also represents a pretty big risk in terms of if there's a failure sooner than that, that's 500 households that would be without, you know, sewer services. And, you know, one person said that if you know, they had gotten from the Red Cross that this would be a national type of disaster. It would make national news and be something that required people from across the nation to come to resolve the situation. It sounded like, it sounded like there was a way to handle it in terms of pumping the sewage to existing sewer lines in emergency circumstances. But that would be significant cost. And, you know, so at least people are thinking about, you know, here's how it would get handled. I think the likely thing that is to allow some changes to occur is the permitting process that PCA is in charge of. Unfortunately, their permit reviewer position is empty right now, has been apparently for a while. The permit holder applied appropriately and timely in 2019. And it's a 5-year permit. That, you know, that is in suspension because of it. So
Sounds cute.
so once the permit process starts, there's going to be an opportunity for interested organizations or parties to be able to participate in commenting on it. And I think that's the point where Valley Branch could take some action, tracking what is going on the permitting process. And PCA was pretty aware that, yes, people would want to comment on it. And that would be a kind of a key point for us to be aware of and participate in.
Without a doubt. That's important.
And I
Yes,
think
sir.
another takeaway that directly impacts the watershed district is the owners of Cimarron had at one point said that part of the issue is due to decisions that we've made, and there's nothing that supports that. So
Yeah. This memo that we saw last time. With it. So,
Did you gentlemen receive any information, or was there any comments by anybody or any entity that mentioned something about going in with a sanitary sewer? Did that come up at all?
I wanted to make sure that Metropolitan Council was there, and they said that they had a program 4 or 5 years ago where they were offering a grant of $250,000 to Cimarron to be able to replace, the sewer or make the sewer connection. When you think about $250,000 out of $4 million.
Well, that's-
Weren't real enthusiastic, unless they're really.
I think the consensus was that they want paid for by public funds, was not interested in anything.
Okay. So at this point, we're in a holding pattern, so to speak. Hopefully, we won't have any disasters in the near future. And I guess we're just going to wait and see. But at this point, what you gentlemen suggested, you, especially Rick, with keeping notes and tracking the developments is going to be important to us and our mission. So my guess is that that's essentially what we need to do right now. And leave it at that. I don't want to force an issue. I don't want this to turn into a political situation. Because it might go there. And I certainly don't want to volunteer any funding at this point, even though what you mentioned was a good idea, and that sort of involvement is important because it helps us community-wide. So that's my take.
Yeah.
So we'll be at the next meeting. Yeah, we'll find out when that happens. I'll probably be able to attend that. No procedures. Just having fun. Okay. So before we go to future business, I just want to add, we received a thank you card from Ms. Melissa Dear managers, thank you for the generous gift card. My husband and I are looking forward to using it. I appreciate the opportunity to serve Valley Branch Watershed District. I have enjoyed working with you. Thanks again, Melissa Imsick. And so we'll have to thank her again for thanking us. So we'll find a way to do that. She's a lovely person. It broke my heart when she left us, because she'd been with us for so long and she'd been very helpful. I've been a manager for a while, so. Okay. Too much information. Now, shall we go ahead and discuss this business with Mr. Malkowski? What I'd like to do, if it's all right with you, sir, is to have John, our engineer, lead us into what's happening. We can understand this, and then we can get your take. And sir, I assume I've seen you before, but I can't.
Yeah, I'm Scott. I'm from the Afton Groundwater Committee. Just here to,
Oh, that's right.
yeah,
Forgive me.
just here to see
Okay,
what you guys are up to.
okay. I'm glad. Did you ever, if I may, very quickly, did you ever connect with, who was it? Somebody from Bellwin, or I think I mentioned it to you. I asked you to talk to somebody, not that you.
No, there was
You don't know what I'm talking about.
talk of some nitrates in in a creek sampling, Turkey Creek or something.
I never even heard of Turkey Creek.
Wasn't it? Wasn't it?
That's Valley Creek.
Was it?
Valley Creek.
Valley Creek.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that.
I'm sure there's turkeys there.
Okay. There are indeed.
That's where the nitrates come from.
Yes. He's all over that one. Okay, that's correct. Okay, then, John, please.
Mr. President, managers received a permit application this afternoon for a project that could be discussed at your next meeting if it's complete. Based on my initial review, it's not complete, so it might not be until later August that it will be presented. Share screen very well. It's fine on my computer, but then. So the project is in the city of Montemita, and it abuts the city of Pine Springs. It's just to the west of Warner Avenue.
If I may, this is obviously within the Valley Branch Watershed District.
Yes,
Okay,
but it's very close with the border with Rice Creek Watersheds.
okay.
So this is a 1976 drawing of the area. This is Warner Road, and this is Mr. McCouse. I can't pronounce your last name very well.
Malkowski.
This is Jim's driveway right here.
Good.
And the development in question is just to the north of this. What they submitted today is dividing approximately 1 acre parcel into 3 parcels. And building homes on those 3 parcels.
Okay,
The problem and the concern, not necessarily a problem, is that there's this large wetland on Jim's property that has a culvert underneath Jim's driveway that allows a couple square miles of watershed to drain through this parcel, get to Bevins Lane, city of Montemita, go through pipes and ditches to another wetland, eventually gets to one. So the concerns are that the development here might somehow negatively impact upstream properties by raising the outlet or somehow not restricting flow so that flow can't continue to go its current way. So negatively impacting existing parcels, but then also if these structures aren't constructed high enough that they could also flood. So it seems that the city of Montemita is not necessarily aware of the complicated hydrology in this area. Inspector Brower recalls that this area was flooded 4 years ago. But the city engineer doesn't quite remember it that way, even though they were constructing a utility project during those high water.
That was a fact that it was flooded.
Yes,
We have a record of that. Mr. Malkowski has a record. We all do. Okay.
so just like any project, when it comes to us for review, they'll need to submit calculations and drawings that show that it conforms to the Valley Branch Watershed District rules. We'll look at it to make sure that they manage your stormwater so that they're providing the volume control that the Watershed District requires, and that they're providing rate control, and that they're also making sure that the homes are constructed at least 2 feet above the 100-year flood elevation, and that they're not somehow negatively impacting other people by increasing the flood level, by basically damming up the overflow. There's also an existing natural low area on this site that they'll need to document whether it's a wetland or not. If it is a wetland, then that would trigger a lot of extra rules, and that would probably cause some significant changes to this design because the low area is in between these two proposed.
So I mean, who's responsible for assessing that wetland status?
They are, as the project proponent.
They have to.
They have to
Okay.
do that, and then we confirm whether
Excellent.
we agree with that.
And so when they approach us with a permit, this has to be documented.
Correct.
Awesome. I love that. Okay.
Where's the culvert in right now?
The existing culvert underneath Jim's driveway is, show a different figure. Can't really see, it's right here. We'll have a better figure next meeting, but it's right in this area here. And so their current plan would have it discharge into a proposed infiltration basin. And then there'd be a pipe between this infiltration basin and the existing infiltration basin that was constructed 4 years ago or so. And then that would overflow to some existing pipes and get into the wetland to the west of the site. But we'll need to review to make sure that the proposed pipe that they have between these two basins is adequately sized, because they are proposing to raise the overflow if that pipe can't handle it. And so by raising the emergency overflow, then that could cause problems, not only for this site, but for others.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. Before we get to you, Mr. Malkowski, Mr. Inspector, have we looked at this property at all? Yes or no?
Yeah, I said yesterday.
You were, very good. And what have you found?
Well, as John mentioned, 4 years ago, that area was flooding, the way the water drains from the east comes underneath Warner, so the ponds kind of equalize, fill up. There's culverts that come from the east pond into the wetland pond. And so when that gets to a certain elevation, then it exits through that culvert to the city property, to their infiltration basin and storm sewer system. So I'm sure the last couple of years, there's nothing because of the drought. But now water's starting to come back up again. And we know that there was a lot of water moving through there when the city tore up Bevins. I was out there, they were dewatering a lot. There was so much groundwater in that process that they were continually dewatering so they could actually work in it. So I know that area gets inundated with water, either, it's groundwater, but there's also the surface water was quite an issue that they had to try to route while they're working there. So whether there's a wetland on the city side of the property or not needs to be determined. I think John mentioned that, if there's an impact to another wetland there. But most importantly, allowing that water to flow through the system. Because as it makes its way down Bevins, it goes, as John mentioned, into a series of ponds and eventually a long lake. So yeah, it's kind of like a stair step approach, ice cube trays, right? And filling up and moving down. And so, and this is a critical piece to make sure the water continues to flow. And certainly their elevations better be correct because we could see flooded, 3 flooded houses there, so.
Okay,
But yeah, I mean, when I looked at it yesterday, there's a lot of trees on the backside of it, so it's really hard to picture 3 houses there right now. It's narrow to me, but
you don't see
but
any,
still,
nothing's been disturbed at this point.
nothing's been disturbed,
Okay.
nothing's been touched, so I'm sure their plan is to probably go in there and remove trees and regrade and do something, so. And bring in fill if they're allowed, I would imagine that's their plan. And maybe that all meets the rules, I don't have an opinion on that,
Okay,
I just know that it has been a floodplain in the past.
okay,
Mr. President, Manager,
Yes, sir.
so this map shows the watersheds, the main watersheds to Long Lake, and so all of this area going up to the Montemita School. If all of these wetlands were to overflow and this Elton Pond that the managers pumped a few years ago, these 2 ponds, if they were also to overflow, all of them would get into Jim's wetland. And
Oh.
then Jim's wetland overflows to Bevins Lane, this is Bevins Lane, and then it overflows into these wetlands behind. This area to the south of Jim's wetland also flows into Jim's wetland. The divide between Long Lake and Jim's wetland is right in this area. So there's a huge drainage area that all could, if all the wetlands were to fill up and overflow, that could get to this area. And that's why it's very critical that we spend the time to review it like we do all permits to make sure that they conform.
Okay. very good, sir. Okay, with that said, Mr. Melkowski, I mean this most respectfully. We allowed you 3 minutes to talk. In lieu of everything you've just heard, that includes you, Miss Nancy. What are your primary concerns?
Well, we are down to mostly attempting to minimize the impact of our properties by the proposed houses and properties abutting our property. Literally, my driveway shoulder is concurrent or with the property of Magmita. So if the worst thing would happen that I'm trying to prevent, the process, if they excavated right up to the property line, they would disturb my driveway shoulder, then it would collapse on that side. So I'm out now. Initially, I would have liked to have not had any development because the house that's in there now is literally in my backyard, 40 feet from my garden, So that's legal. So then the corner property that is in question now was at one time did pass any percolation tests. So 49 years ago, when I bought my property, I had not crystal ball to see that at some point in time, this is going to become acidified, if you will.
Sure, that's what's been happening.
Yeah, so it seems late in the game, but.
Yeah.
But, so we attempted to, 4 or 5 years ago, work with the neighborhood to make this property, especially the part that was adjacent to Forner Avenue, a little park-like that. So things were planted, trees, and since the neighbors all participated in doing that. That brings us to fast forward, of course. However, the city of Matamidi has done everything legally, but the legal process kind of leaves us out until we enter it by surprise sometimes. And so that is how we've arrived at this late in the game. But when we realized that when the Bevins Lane was changed from a rural road to a city street, We did not realize at that moment that they were gonna stub in all these stubs because they had conducted a survey of the people before, unbeknownst to us, along Bevins Lane to see how many people, if a majority of the people wanted the road to become a city street. And that's important because these people were the ones that were maintaining that little park light at the edge of the lane. So apparently, we didn't know this because we don't get notices. Because we live in Pine Springs, they only send them to Montevideo residents.
Sure.
So we were unaware of some of the process that was going on. When we found out, we started talking to the neighbors and they were talking with us. And so they had duly decided to stub in properties because they could make some money by selling properties and they were getting older, as all of us were. So the process is legal. And so now one house has already gone in, as I referred to it before. And we are attempting to save what we can of a natural boundary, even though it isn't the exact boundary line. I'm trying to protect some kind of buffer between the development details and our property, which is probably 100 yards long, the driveway all the way into our property. And to do that, we began to pay attention. And so we did. So as soon as I saw that there was going to be land being sold, I called up the real estate agent. And I brought him out there and I said, before you sell this property, I would wonder if you realize the hydrology in your language, but if he knew what kind of water flowed into the property that he was selling. And so I took him out there, he came and we walked to the property. And I said, probably on the average, we've lived there 49 years. And I would say every 2 or 3 years, the flowage, well, it is immense. And it used to flow down Bevins Lane above the surface. So much that humorously, the fish were always swimming upstream, even on those days. And that lasted for weeks because the water would recede much more slowly after that. So maybe that would last a month and a half. So realizing that, he said, I will tell people who may be interested in the properties, just to buy them, about this problem. Meanwhile, the city of Malamidi passed it on apparently to their planner. Their planner is a consultant.
Okay.
And that planner saw that 2 houses were proposed for this 1 acre of property into which the water flowed. And so we approached the city engineer, found out what we could find out, talked to the planner. The project was going ahead, so we met with the planning commission of Matamita. They had already passed it, they said, so they were not interested in doing any further considerations for the property to be passed to be developed.
Okay.
So now 2 houses were proposed on that property, and that would be within 40 feet of our driveway. The base of the building, any structure. So we said, well, okay, we'll have to do that. So then I met with the proposed owner. I have to say it that way because the owner apparently hasn't bought it until the Valley Branch approves the plat by the city. So we went to the city council and we received a nice welcome and empathy and sympathy, but they said, well, we're going forward on the project.
Okay.
So I figure I'm down now to trying to reduce the impact on the property from 2 houses. We then, in the time when this was evolving, they took the property of 1 acre and they were able to squeeze 1 more house into the property, which is an amazing thing. But it's legal, I checked myself. So there are three houses projected for that same property. So trying to minimize that would be something I'm seeking here, to at least have one house less on the properties if they're developable at all. And it's only 1 acre, but as you better than most people will know, 1 acre of water flowing could be a lot of trouble.
Okay,
And so that is one thing. The second thing that we would even seek to protect is along my driveway. I have had the luxury of having that freely all these years. And so I've kind of grown a canopy over my driveway. And so that's shared, of course, with the driveway on the shoulder. So now I'm out to protect that area at least, even if the developer develops. The city of Matamita engineer, consulting engineer John, so he has proposed to divert the water that comes when it floods through my culvert, which is a 17-inch culvert. He is planning to divert it westward into a ditch. So he wants an open ditch, which so none of these do I prefer or like. Into an open ditch that might run for 20 to 30 yards. Then into a pipe, into the holding pond that John referred to earlier on. And then up into the sewage system, stormwater sewer now on.
Okay.
I'm attempting to protect that vegetation along that acreage, which would probably take 5 yards of property along that. Of that line of the driveway to the north onto that property. So that's my cause. Now, if I had my crystal ball 49 years ago,
I know, with this is a concern personally, I don't like to see all this urbanization,
Yeah.
but we have to do what we have to do.
He did, yeah.
It's understandable. So the question I have for you, and thank you for telling us what's happening here. You're also aware that we have our constraints and we're gonna do what we can because we're looking out for the best interest of Watershed District, protecting our resources.
And in that
Yeah.
context, could I thank you for the opportunity?
Of course. No,
John has been fantastic in communicating.
without a doubt, we think it's bad.
So
But we have to be careful because we don't want to
I understand.
all the time. I don't know if the first thing that came to my mind was an environmental impact study. That's something that's not going to happen. Is there, in other words, does Mr. Malkowski have any recourse, any idea, anything to help him look at what's happening to either maybe prevent something that might be taking place that is not amenable to this particular wilderness or this area, or damaging the wetland? Is there anything, anybody, for goodness sake, that can think of that might help mitigate a potential problem? John, you would be my first guest.
Well,
Yes, sir.
typically Valley Ranch reacts. So when somebody submits a permit application, we review it against the Watershed District's rules and regulations. So we don't deny a permit because we don't like the project. We don't approve projects that don't conform to the rules just because we like the project. All projects have to be treated equally against the Watershed District.
So, thank you, sir. Our engineer did mention that there is a determination that will be made about the impact on the wetland. And so at this point, it seems to me, managers, if they have any input on this, that what's going to happen, as we have said to others, that we will hold their feet to the fire. We make sure that there's conformance, that people comply with what we're doing, and hopefully this won't be a problem for you and other residents, and of course, our waters, our wetlands. So I guess we're gonna see what happens. but we will make every effort to be thorough about what we're doing. So before they break ground, before they do anything, they have to supply us with a permit. We're gonna check them like we do everything else.
That's all I could ask for.
Yes, sir.
And I really appreciate the opportunity
Yeah.
to be here. And even though we get as old as we get, we learn. I am learning
Yeah.
this, and I have to thank you, because I've served on multiple boards and committees, for all you do for the big money, of course. But for all you do, you're sometimes invisible, and that can be good. But you're here when we need you, and that's why I'm here. So thank you for the opportunity.
No, we appreciate that, and that's a sincere comment that I made about what we're going to do. So we're going to do our due diligence. And hopefully we'll have our fingers crossed that everybody's going to benefit and things will ultimately be all right. So
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Malkowski. Appreciate your visiting us. Okay,
And thanks, John.
don't forget our inspector.
And yes, I'm really impressed. That's fantastic that you were out there. I told last guy that I won't shoot. No, and I don't mean that literally, because I don't, but
I did walk on your property. I was familiar with the area because
Did he set up
I
a
spent time out there on another permit, so I was really familiar with the property, so I understood exactly how the water flowed through there, so.
yeah, it's a lot of water and when it comes.
It's a lot of water.
And we loved it because,
Oh, we know, we're watching this happen right before our eyes. Very, very, very quick story, not to talk your head off, but a long time ago when I came to Minnesota, I lived in Oakdale and my wife and I had a townhouse. And I remember the open lot and the cornfields over in Lake Elmo, they were beautiful.
yeah,
I said, oh, we live up against, of course, it's all urban now, but I remember going across to this lot, seeing all these beautiful wildflowers. I picked a huge bouquet for my wife. I set it on the kitchen table and she looked at it, and to me it was spectacular, because it was, it's nature. She came in, she looked at it, she goes, you picked that from the empty lot, didn't you? That was the end of that. So that's the way things are going.
yeah, we moved into the countryside and we're being sidewalks now, as you saw going in out there too.
Yeah.
So,
Holy cow.
I think it was devastating, 2 years ago when we put the sewer system in, and in order to do it, they had to go so deep that they pumped our pond almost dry,
Oh, my goodness.
11 million
11 million.
up to the other.
Yeah.
They didn't have a permit that they had a statement to their city council to
Wow.
pump up to 11 million gallons. I saw my water going down in my pond.
Yeah.
I immediately contacted, they had 4 pumps going on Bevins Lane and, so
Terrible.
we went to the city right away. And so he left 1 pump to try to recuperate, but by that time the water.
Holy buckets.
So if that water was still there, it would be running through the culvert today.
Very good, sir. Thank you. All right. With that covered at this point, future business and meetings. We have August 8th and I assume we will. August 8th and 22nd for town managers to attend. I'll be here. I still haven't asked Angie about volunteering for the fair. I hope there's still an opening. Still have to do that. So, yeah, I better call her tomorrow.
I got I emailed her today and I got a bounce back. She's not available, but I think I emailed the managers a sign up sheet a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Last I looked, there were only a couple openings left. Sure.
And I can call you tomorrow, sign me up because you do all my dirty work and gonna have to sign me up. Hate to sound selfish, but if they have foot-long hot dogs, I'm there. Sorry. Okay.
It will be there.
That is good to hear.
Practice.
The The 2025 budget workshop, Baytown Community Center, August 20th, 5 to 7 p.m. We'll all be attending that, I assume. And chloride management workshop, Baytown here, Baytown Community Center, August 27th. Everybody's aware of that. John will, the August 8th meeting, you'll remind us again and again. Thank you, sir. And of course, the Washington County Fair, July 31 through August 4th. I brought that up earlier, and I plan to attend. Managers. How about you, Susanna? Away? You don't do that stuff?
Of course I do.
Never mind. Okay. Okay. The Conservation Development Tour in Northern Washington County, Wednesday, August 7th, 1 to 4 p.m.
Mr. President, I sent an email on this too. I could
You did?
send it. It's a bus tour of Northern Washington County conservation developments. So one being Jackson Meadow site. And
Would it be beneficial to
I
it?
can't remember the other two.
Okay. So it's something beneficial that we would consider. If you could send us another reminder, sir, please. And also, I do have a question about the meeting I missed for the St. Croix. He's going to attend electronically. I'll ask you about that. I will speak to you tomorrow if that's okay. All right, with all that said, we have one more item. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 We're adjourned.